who here would like to just tell people like what NYC is in general? I know it's Nazarene Youth Conference, but what is it? Louder. Thank you.
So it's just like it happens about every 4 years, and it's just all the youth around the Nazarene Church that come together, and we do services, we do what's it called? Service projects, and it's just like a gathering. It's like General Assembly, but for youth.
Yeah. So it used to be a global thing. Now it is just for North America, so USA and Canada. There's over 10,000 high schoolers that go and participate in this. Not to brag, but our church had the second largest NYC group from the district who went, so you guys, you're doing good here. You're doing pretty good. So some of the questions that we have. So we'll start off kind of light, and then we'll move into what the Lord is doing. So who has an appropriate, funny story from NYC?
All right, RJ, I got you. So on the first day in Tampa, we go to a water park. At the water park, a group of us is waiting for a ride. We've probably been waiting for about like 45 minutes in the sun. We're hot, we're tired. Laura, she decides to jump on like a handrail thing. And as she's jumping up, she kicks her leg out and hits Josh right in the bad spot.
Oh.
I felt his
so
pain.
You're getting it. It's passing around the crowd. So, all right. So, any other funny NY story someone wants to share?
Towards the end of...
Wait, that's Nick. So, every time you speak, introduce yourself.
I'm Nick.
I'm Hua. So towards the end of NYC, basically, this is how it went. You'd get like a bag of like granola bars, yogurt, and like oranges, and they'd be like, "This is your breakfast." And we're like, "Okay." So the snacks, you eat the things that are gonna go bad, and then you have like the chewy fruit and nut granola bars. Not good. One night, Kaylee and I, or my friend Kaylee, she's not here, but we were very, very, very hungry. And we didn't have any snacks, but we knew somebody who always has food because they're always buying food. And that was my cousin Titus.
Your cousin Titus,
yes,
okay.
And so...
Titus has 2 hollow legs, if you don't know.
And so I called Titus. I'm like, "Titus, can you please bring us some food?" Like, he's like, "Will you give me $1?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Will you give me 50 cents?" No. What about 10? No. What about 0 cents? Yes. Okay, I like stairs. So basically, he liked running the stairs to get us the food. We were 7 floors apart, by the way. And he was just going up the stairs. Comes downstairs. I was like, "Bring us anything." We had sandwiches earlier today. I was like, "Please do not bring us a sandwich." He brings us, did you bring us an empty bag of chips, a Sprite bottle filled with water, and a sandwich that had bites taken out of it? And then he texts me, he goes, "Did you like the Sprite?" And Kaylee opens it, she goes, "It's water!" And so we were at the end of our rope, and Titus gave us nothing.
In his defense, that's what your dad probably would have done to you.
Yeah, I know. He was like, "It's funny." And I was like, "It's not funny."
All right, so what concerts? So in addition to service projects where they go and feed people and clean up beaches and sew handbags that are going out to foster kids, there's concerts also. So what were the concerts that you had this year?
We had King and Country, Lecrae, Zach Williams, and there was that one, Blessing and Offering.
Blessing Offer. Okay. So what was your maybe your favorite concert moments?
My name is Lily, and my favorite concert was for King Country, mostly because I knew all the songs, so we could be like, "Yeah."
How many of it have you guys been to a King and Country concert before? Okay, so you
Look
know.
at all those
you know.
hands. And my brother Josiah, who is a counselor at camp right now, went down on like the mosh pit or like the floor where you could be super close to the stage. And from what he told me, he's like, it was super cool. I high-fived Joel, and it was like the best thing ever.
So is Joel a band member?
He's one of the main people.
Oh, he's one of the lead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, cool. All right, I don't know the names of the bands. So, all right, other favorite concert moments?
Oh, hi, I'm Kayana. I also went onto the floor for that, and I caught a guitar pick from one of him. But the last concert, Lecrae's concert, so when he told everybody he was going off stage, he was saying goodnight to everybody, and everybody was chanting one more song. He came out and did, was it?
So these two are sisters, and they're fighting over who gets to share this moment. So now you see what's going
I
on.
was going to tell, and she can't even remember the song.
Okay, finish. Lydia, want to finish?
Anyways, it was really cool because me and Kaylee knew most of the words, and everybody was screaming because we didn't know that he was going to do a song, and it was one of his songs he did with Andy Mineo, but it was pretty cool. Yeah.
What song was it, Hua?
It's the song that I lost my voice to at the concert because I was on the floor. It was Coming in Hot.
Coming in hot. All right. Anyone else favorite concert moments? Favorite?
I heard that Avery surprised everybody at the Lecrae concert because she knew almost every word to every song. So.
Oh, you knew the words?
Pastor.
All right, you need to meet my dad because my dad is a huge Lecrae fan.
Pastor Josh was like, yeah, we were all just having a good time, and I'd look over at Avery once in a while, and I was like, holy cow, this girl knows every word.
When my parents first moved to this church, my dad was in the car with Pastor Jason, our kids and family pastor, who is away at kids camp right now. And he told Pastor Jason, because Jason said, what kind of music do you want to listen to? And my dad said, I like both kinds of music, rap and hip hop. So for those, all of us, have any of you been to an NYC? Would you raise your hand if you've been? 1, 2, okay. So no one here has been to that type of worship. So can you describe what worship was like and maybe why it connected with you?
All the worship was very powerful. All the
Worship leaders.
the leaders were very involved, dancing the entire time, energetic. It was basically impossible not to put your hand up and scream at the top of your lungs in praise.
It was just so engaging because we were discussing with Hua how the sound was so full that you cannot hear the person next to you. So everyone was not afraid to sing, and it was so engaging in the way that everyone was like lifting up their hands, and it was just like you were encouraged to do it, and it was just so awesome too. When they stopped singing, you could hear 10,000 voices singing to the same God. It was amazing.
I'm Avery, and I thought it was just super cool because, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I kind of lost hope with my generation because we're kind of crazy. But it was just it was very encouraging, that there were 10,000 people my age there that were just singing and praising the Lord, and it was one denomination from one part of the world, so there's so many more kids out there that feel that same way, and it was just very encouraging knowing that there's hope for kids my age. We're not lost. God's working through us and in us.
Another cool thing about worship is that if you don't like concerts, then you won't like this, because it's literally a concert, but for all worshiping, and every once in a while, one of the lead singers would stop singing, and you could hear almost every single person in that whole stadium singing, and it just gives you a second. You're like, oh my gosh, there's all of these people doing the same thing I'm doing, and it's just it's an incredible experience. Everyone should be able to do that at least once.
Hi, I'm Titus, and I just thought it was really cool looking around the big stadium and seeing 10,000 high schoolers worship. I just thought that was really cool.
I'm Alicia, and one of the cool things during worship that they did, so as they're singing, they'd shut off all the lights, And if it was one of the more upbeat songs, everyone would be clapping and all the wristbands would light up, and you see like all 10,000 wristbands light up around the stadium, and it was really cool. And sometimes they'd flash on and off, so it looked like it was just really awesome.
So it's hard to understand. You can, if you go to YouTube and just search Nazarene Youth Conference, you can go watch these services. But as far as like the special lighting and everything, that was connected to the wristbands everyone had. And so in the middle of the concert, they would control kids' wristbands. And so lights would shut off, hands would go in the air, and these wristbands would light the stadium, like kind of like the old school lighters. There you go, lighters. Yes, lighters.
So for me, it's really encouraging because like doing worship on Wednesdays, you kind of sing and I just kind of close my eyes because not everybody worships the same way, which is fine. But when we were at NYC, like the music is really loud, which is really good. I think for our generation, sometimes we have trouble with worshiping, especially just because we're so worried about what other people think we look like. And so when it's loud, so that like you can basically hear the worship and then your thoughts, and it's dark. And so you're not worried about other people like looking at you or anything because it's dark. And so I really liked that it was darker and that it was louder because I think it encourages more of like the opportunity in the stands just to take the time to be alone with God instead of worried about everything else around you.
That's good. So, kind of the whole point, and I mean, you guys were incredible at how you showed up at garage sales with your junk, and then you bought other people's junk. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me, but you funded these, I mean, it's twice as many as this, kids going to this thing. It's really incredible. But the reason we did it, it wasn't for a concert, was it? I mean, it was nice that they did some service projects, but that's not why we did it, is it? We did it hoping that they're going to hear from the Lord, and that God would speak to them. So that would be the next question: is how did God speak to you? What's He saying to you?
God spoke to me. There was this one part there was this experience thing that we had in, I don't remember what day that was. Yeah, it was around one of the last days, and we went through like these stations as you normally would. But the last part, it really like struck me because we had to, we had like this cup of water that was, I don't remember, but what I took away from this whole experience was that I need to take more chances in bringing myself and God to other people, because that's what I feel like I've been called to. Because I have a lot of friends who don't know God, and I'm like, maybe there's a reason I have all of these friends that don't know God. And like, maybe I should tell them, like, hey, you should come to church or come to youth group every once in a while. Like, we won't force it upon you, but it'd be awesome if you could come and see what all of this is about and why because I always get to ask the question, Lily, why are you so happy all the time? And I always say, because I go to church and because I have all these friends and I have God with me all the time, no matter what I do. Because I'm like, that's my caffeine. God is my caffeine. He's my cup of coffee in the morning, and He makes me happy and stay happy most of the day.
Hi, my name's Kiana, and the way God speaks through me is I have a hard time listening to sermons because it's like my brain, I know what they're talking about, I can hear the words, but it just goes one ear and through it out the other. But when it's worshiping, it's like a sermon to me, and I can actually hear the words, and it makes me really emotional because I can feel it, and it's like a sermon. I don't know, it's like there's this one song, it's Your Love, and it's like one of the verses like, you call me out to the deep end, but I can barely swim, but if that's where you want me, Lord, I'm diving in.
Did you guys hear that? What was the words again? You're calling me to the deep end.
But I can barely swim, but if that's where you want me, Lord, I'm diving in.
But if that's where you want me, Lord, I'm diving in. Isn't that good?
But yeah.
I felt like God was telling me to trust him more.
So one of the people that spoke at NYC, they talked about how through their life they had kind of like held on really tightly to what was going to happen in their life and where their life was going. She called it like having a white-knuckled grip on her life, which is something that I can relate to a lot because I don't like not knowing what's going to happen. And so I've always been like, well, I know where I'm going. I know what I'm going to do. Never really like listened to what God has for me and where he wants me. And so I think my biggest takeaway from this is like just trusting him, trusting that he has a plan for me and that it's not always going to be comfortable, but that it's going to be amazing. And my prayer since that preaching has been like, just God, make me uncomfortable. Make me feel uncomfortable with where I'm going, because I know that if I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing and I'm doing something for him. So yeah.
During the first couple days, I did not hear from God like at all. But then during the sixth session, before the session started, I prayed to God. I'm like, God, I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you have planned for me. And strangely enough, during that session, God sat me down in my chair during the, after the session questions. And he's like, Nick, I have a plan for you. Even though you've been through so much pain already, we have a plan for you, Nick. I have a purpose for your life.
Okay, like Avery said, the sermon about letting go and like having control really spoke to me because I like doing things my way. I don't really I think that my way is the way. It's not the way. And it was just like a reminder that God has good control over my life. He created me specifically for his purpose, and he's gonna take me wherever he's gonna take me, and he's gonna equip me with everything that I need, and I just have to learn how to dive in and trust in him that he knows what he's doing with my life.
I feel like God was telling me, it's much similar to Lily's, to open up about him more around my friends and be less worried about what they think, but what God thinks about me instead, and be like less self-conscious like at youth group, and like open up more and like raise my hands more and not worry what other people think about me.
During this NYC trip, I knew before this, I knew I was had a call to like ministry, but I didn't know quite what I wanted to do. But I knew I had a feeling and I knew I had a calling. But when I was at NYC, I heard one of these, the lady who was an MK talking about the mission trips as she was a kid, and I was like, I just really was able to listen, and I felt like God pulled me in on that. And one day while we were walking around at the booths, the mission booths, there were some mission trip booths, and I walked past it maybe 3 times, and I kept hearing my voice say, ask, ask. And so I finally sat down and asked about it, and they talked to me about it. And missions, I feel like a calling to it, because it's like I'm very on hands with stuff on my learning, and being able to, what I want to do is something to help people physically, and I feel like mission trips are helping because I'll be able to help people, but I just felt a calling to that.
There was a lot, I feel like, that stood out to me. I'm not a very big note taker, and I'm probably the least organized person you'll ever meet in your life. So I don't take notes, and I took notes at every single session. But probably what stood out to me the most was when we were talking. So each day, each session was based on something like water related, and the last one was about overflow and how like we only have so much to give to other people. And so, like, we can pour into others, but at some point, like, if it's just coming from us, like, our tap will run dry. But we have this source that is never ending and that will overflow into everything. And so, for me, I'm a person that I just feed into everybody until I don't have very much left for myself, if anything at all. And I think just hearing that and how, like, I don't have to take everything and bear the weight on my shoulders. Like, I can leave it at the cross and allow God to overflow into my life so that my source never runs dry. And I'm always able to fill into other people, and that it's not me filling into other people, but it's God using me. So like showed these like pictures, and in like my notes it said like we are like earthen pitchers for God's hands. And so it's like we are the vessels, and God uses us, and he makes a way through us for other people. And that tied into the very end when they were talking about how like it's really easy to like go somewhere and be really excited and just to be living on this high, and then you go back home and everything just kind of crashes and you kind of go back to ground zero. But Pastor Stephanie was talking about how like we like still water gets gross. Like you think of like a little tiny like I don't know, like just a little body of water, like it can get like there can be bacteria growing in it, like mosquitoes start to fly around it, like things start to grow in it that aren't good for it. But that doesn't really happen in rivers because the water is always flowing. And so she was talking about how instead of coming back to where we're living and the people that we're seeing, and instead of just staying content with where we are, kind of like what Avery said, pushing yourself to be uncomfortable, but while you're uncomfortable, living in the overflow, because that's always going to have things pushing through you that are God. And so just being able to grow in God and with God, but have God flowing through us the entire time.
That's good. All right, so we'll throw them a curveball, something that I didn't text to them. So those are all kind of, they knew those were coming. So we'll see how they do here. Was there something from NYC that you would like to see happen in our church? What was from there that you'd maybe like to see happening here?
I feel like it's really easy to put on a facade. And to just come, like you talk about how church is where we're supposed to, we always say like, oh, this is where you come just to be, like you come no matter how good your life is going, how bad it's going, no matter how much control you have. But I feel like oftentimes like we come with the expectation that, okay, we're just gonna make it work for an hour and a half, and we're gonna put on our nice clothes, and we're gonna make sure nobody's arguing as we're driving here, and like we're like, which never happens, and we're just gonna get here and we're gonna power through, and then we're gonna go home and it's gonna be fine. But they really focused on just being authentic, whether it's while we're listening to the sermon, whether it's in worship, after church, before church, like making the effort to go the extra mile to actually be God's hands. Because, yeah, out there is a mission field, but, like, we are called to be God's hands, and we can work with anyone. We can grow with anybody. And I feel like it's so easy to come to a place like church and to just like have your people go to church, go home, and then there's so many faces here that you will never talk to. But that's not like what God intended. And so I think I would just like to see more community grow.
What else? Is there something else you'd like to see that you saw at NYC that you'd like to see here?
Probably more involvement, because at NYC they were like, you need to go out there and, I don't know, praise God and show people what we do here. And me coming back here, I kind of miss that, being like, we all have this God inside of us. We all hear that little voice being like, you should go talk to that person that you've never seen before. Or be like, go give that homeless person some food or something. And sometimes most of us ignore it, and to be honest, I do too. But we need to take that step into the river, into the overflow, and take that chance, because nothing bad is going to happen if you take that chance. Even if something bad does happen, it will always turn out good. There can be no good without some bad, but you need to take that step or nothing else will change.
Is there anyone else? So, I've been working on kind of a little 5-minute devotional thought, and I feel like God keeps whittling it and whittling it and whittling it. But it comes from Psalm 145, verse 4. It says, let each generation tell its children of your mighty acts. Let them proclaim your power. So according to Scripture, passing the torch is one of the most important things that we do as a church, because that's how the church operates from generation to generation to generation. I mean, we understand that, right? We understand it, but it's practically a hard thing to do. So I don't, how many of you actually watched one of the NYC services? Okay, so a bunch of you guys. So I watched every single NYC service, and I've watched a couple of them a couple of times because they're so good, and I found myself crying a lot as I was watching these 10,000 kids raising their hands and jumping and worshiping the Lord, and there's something amazing. I mean, if you've ever been in a stadium like that worshiping, it's amazing. But it's even more amazing when you see a stadium full of 10,000 teens worshiping the Lord with everything they have. Since watching that, I think as a pastor, my heart breaks a little bit for the reality of probably most of those teens and what they're going back to. And I think that probably a lot of you know that right at this very moment, there are thousands of inspired teens kind of walking back to kind of a wet blanket church. That's a tough thing to think about. I think those are there's a lot of churches in this world that are unwilling to change, unwilling to pass the torch, and there's just such momentum with this group that's spreading all over North America, and a lot of them, their reality is pretty tough. Casey, my wife, she's at a conference this morning, but she spoke with a pastor who attended both General Assembly, that's where the adults gather and worship, and they vote on stuff, and they create this gigantic manual, and they argue over periods and commas and or, those types of things, along with the parliamentarian and all that kind of stuff. And there was this pastor she was talking to who went to both General Assembly and NYC. Now, those are happening within a few weeks of each other, and that's a pretty powerful experience to go watch the adult gathering and the youth gathering. And here's what the pastor said. General Assembly, I felt like we're just barely hanging on. NYC was completely different. It was inspiring, it was filled with hope, and it was filled with optimism. My wife and I don't know if you are aware of this or not, but we've been part of Nazarene churches, pastoring Nazarene churches in 6 different states. And for someone who's only 22 years old, that's a lot. That's my oldest saying that she's 18, I can't be 22. But basically what that means is that I've had the opportunity as a pastor to see behind a lot of curtains. I've served on every single district board that there is. I've served on the finance board with Kona. She was our district treasurer in Hawaii. I've served on finance, NYI, missions, Sunday school, advisory board. I've served as a district coach. I've even served as an associate district superintendent. And here's one thing that I know from serving on all these boards across 6 different districts is that there's some reality to the struggle of the church. Most churches are shrinking and struggling. Most districts across America, my friend Pastor Jeff is here, and we were just talking about the similarities amongst districts that are just closing churches rapidly. I mean, you're talking like 6, 8 churches this year alone in our district. There was a study that showed that 40% of pastors will retire in the next 6 years, and there's hardly anyone to replace them. So that's going to increase it's going to accelerate how churches are closing. And most of our Nazarene schools are reporting pastoral graduating classes as low as 6 people. So there's some reality to that. And if you've served on as many boards as I have, if you've served on as many districts as I have, the reasons are pretty obvious. The reasons are because most churches are clinging on to their ways instead of passing the torch and allowing young people to lead. It's not rocket science. It's really not. It's not that hard to see. You don't have to have served on 6 different states, on 6 different districts to know that. That's just kind of the reality. And it's been a generational reality. It was the same reality when you were teenagers. I think that people with as much gray hair as me or more, or possibly less, these are older, extremely faithful, good-intentioned people. I think a lot of times what we do is cling to what we want and what we think we need, especially when it comes to music and worship styles, and we become disgruntled and bitter. What's interesting is that a recent study that has talked about the church in America since COVID, and the group who's leaving the church fastest is who? You would think it would be them. It's not. It's the 55 and older group. That's the group in America that is leaving the church the quickest. So I've got some good news for you, and part of the good news is behind me. And part of the good news is up in the booth and on Livestream and running our service is that I don't think that's the reality of this church. And I think as your pastor, I want you to know that it's because of you that our kids aren't coming back to a wet blanket church. It's because of you that we have so many inspired teens who are coming back to not a church that's arrived. We're not there, but a church that's moving. A church that is trying our best to pass the torch from generation to generation to generation. I want to say thank you as your pastor for allowing things to change. To say thank you as your pastor for allowing teens to lead. To say thank you as your pastor for passing the torch. And the reality is that's essential. We have to do that. You can't move forward in the church without doing it. That's what we see throughout the Bible. It's Moses who passed the torch to Joshua, and Joshua who passed the torch to Elijah, and Elijah to Elisha, and David to Solomon, and Paul to Timothy, and Virgil to me. And someday I'll pass the torch on maybe to one of them. Who knows? But passing the torch is the God-created natural order of things. That's how it works. And so we don't have to be afraid of that. And so here's the truth of that. God will pass it with or without us. He'll pass it with or without us. And so as we pass the torch to future generations, we have a choice to do it gracefully and to build a legacy, or to do it bitter and disgruntled. And I believe, and what I've seen in this church is that you are a church who's choosing to do it gracefully. to you teens that are on stage and at home or in the crowd or probably upstairs and in the back rooms running things. We want you to know that this church loves you and supports you. And we're not just saying this. We actually really do need you to lead. We need you to speak up, to offer the things that God has given you. To you guys, to our church. This is a generation you can confidently pass the torch to. Thinking about it, and we can confidently pass the torch to this generation because they're amazing, number one. But also because the church is going to be okay. I mean, the church is going to be okay. This church is going to be okay. All churches have a beginning and end. None of the churches that were started in the Bible are still around, and so it's the natural cycle of things. I don't see the end in sight for this church. But it will end at some point. That's just how things work. But the church is going to survive and even thrive no matter what. Now, how do I know this? I wrote some things down for myself, and I wasn't even sure I was going to pass it to you, but this is from me. How do I know the church is going to be okay? Well, it outlasted Nero and Hitler. It withstood bad decisions in church boards and the Crusades and the Dark Ages and world wars and civil wars. It's outlasted scholars arguing about doctrinal differences. It's outlasted denominational divisions. It's outlasted cold hearts and unbelief. It's outlasted Woodstock and hippies and legalism. I mean, just go all the way to both sides. I know that speaks to half of you somewhere. It outlasted Watergate and Y2K. Do you remember when everything was going to end in Y2K? It outlasted 911. It outlasted internet. It's outlasted social media. It's still going. The gospel of Christ is not done, and it's not in danger. The church has survived every challenge that Satan, society, and culture has thrown at it, and it'll survive us. Even the bitter us's, even the disgruntled us's. 3 John, verse 4, there's only one chapter. It says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking into the truth. So I've got good news for you, Bend Naz. These young people are walking in truth. That's good news, isn't it? And so we can move forward and we can realize that we can continue to pass the torch as you guys already have been doing. And we can continue to walk forward in ways that resonate with them and help them reach their friends. And then someday they're going to be sitting out there and some other NYC group is going to be here and some pastor's going to be telling them the same thing. So I asked the church band to close with a different song this morning. And it's a song, Your Love Awakens Me. And I really like this song because it talks about the reality of the darkness closing in. It says, feel the darkness shaking. We feel darkness, but do you feel it trembling in fear? All the dead are coming back to life. Hear the song awaken. I think that's what you're hearing this morning, is songs from our teens that are awakening in their hearts. All creation singing, we're alive because you're alive. You called me out of the grave. You called me into the light. You called my name and my heart came alive. And here's the prayer for today. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens. It awakens me. Lord, awaken our hearts to what you're doing around the world and in our own church through our young people. God, we give you our lives, and we we feel the darkness, but would you help us see that the darkness is trembling at your name? It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Would you stand as we close?